With this video, I'm going to have actually two videos that cover all the information in the slides. So this will be part one, and we'll be looking at finding the lowest common multiple in regard to our rational equations. So we will look for, we'll look at the denominators, we'll determine if we can factor those, and then we'll determine what the LCM would be, and then we'll multiply that LCM by each of the terms in the equation. So more or less, we're trying to eliminate the denominators, even though some of the denominators will contain expressions. So this first one, we don't have any, we have denominator of 2 and denominator of 3, but we just don't have any variables in the denominator. So we would say right off the bat that our excluded values are none, because there's no variable in the denominator. So we look at the denominators of 2 and 3. We understand that this is 1. So the LCM in this case would be 6. So we're going to multiply every term in the equation by 6. So this would give us 6x divided by 2 equals 6 times 4 is 24 minus 6x divided by 3. And then we would simplify that, and we would get 3x equals 24 minus 2x, and then I'm going to add the 2x to both sides, and that goes to 0. I'm left with 5x equals 24. So x is going to equal 24 divided by 5, so it could be 24/5 or 4 4/8. So those would be our solutions. Now, without an excluded value, we would always want to check to see, does the solution work? So we would take 4 8/10 divided by 2 equals 4 minus 4 8/10 divided by 3. And you can substitute that in your calculator. 4 8/10 divided by 2 would be 2 4/10 is equal to 4, minus, and 4 8/10 divided by 3 would be 1 6/10. And 4, take away 1 6/10, you get 2 4/10, and 2 4/10 equals 2 4/10. So that checks. That means this was correct. Number 2, you're looking at your denominators, and you see you do have variables. So you're thinking, what can the excluded values be? So thinking back to the video prior to this, when we were simplifying rational expressions, we wanted to look at the denominator. So x plus 1, set it equal to 0. So x cannot be 1. And 4x plus 1, x cannot be negative 1/4. Now, we look at the denominators, like I said, and we determine what would be the LCM. We always want to think, can I factor first? And I can't factor anything out. So what my LCM would be is x plus 1 times 4x plus 1. So I'm going to take 4x plus 1 times x plus 1. It doesn't matter the order, and you write that. And I'm going to multiply that all by x times x plus 1 and 6 times 4x plus 1. So I'm going to multiply this expression by this term and this expression by this term. And we will see, and I'm going to rewrite it just so that we can see what will divide out. So this will be 4x plus 1 times x plus 1 times the term, which is x divided by x plus 1, is equal to 4x plus 1 times x plus 1 times the term, 6 divided by 4x plus 1. So you see what will divide? This will divide one another, and you're left with x times 4x plus 1 is equal to, well, the 4x plus 1's divide out, and you're left with 6 times x plus 1. So we go ahead and distribute, and I get 4x squared plus 4x is equal to 6x plus 6. So I get 4x squared plus x, 4x squared plus x, not 4x, is equal to 6x plus 6. So I'm going to subtract the 6x, and I'm going to get 4x minus 5x, and then I'm going to subtract the 6, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. And I need to factor, and a is not 1, so I'm going to multiply a times c and give me negative 24. It's got to add to give me negative 5. So it'll be negative 8 and positive 3, negative 8, positive 3. And so I write the first term. That's 4x squared minus 8x plus 3x minus 6. And then I'm going to group and factor. So that'll be 4x, x minus 2 plus 3 times x minus 2. So I set these equal to 0. I'm going to get 4x plus 3 is equal to 0, and x minus 2 is equal to 0. So x will be 2, and x will be negative 3/4. Now, based on the excluded values, originally the excluded values were negative 1 and negative 1/4. So excluded values are x equal negative 1 and negative 1/4. And then I'm not going to take the time on this right now, but we would take these values and we would substitute them into the original for x and check to see what the solutions would be and if it would be a correct solution. So number 3, you want to look and see what you can simplify. You can't simplify anything, so we would say that the LCM would be just x minus 3. Even though we see it written twice and we know this is divided by 1, we don't have to write it twice. The LCM is just one term, x minus 3, and we're going to multiply it by the entire equation. The purpose is that we multiply the LCM by each term, then we will lose and eliminate the denominator, which will help us to just work with whole numbers. So x minus 3 times x plus 5 divided by x minus 3 minus 5 times x minus 3 is equal to x minus 3 times 4 divided by x minus 3. So I wrote it that way just so that you start to see, well, those will divide out. So that's x plus 5. I'm going to distribute a negative 5 since it's minus 5. So I'm going to be negative 5x plus 15. So x plus 5 minus 5x plus 15 is equal to, these divide out, and I'm left with 4. So I know I'm going to have one solution because the exponent, it's not a squared term. So 1x minus 5 will be negative 4x, and 5 plus 5 gives me 20, and that equals 4. So I'm going to subtract 20, and I get negative 4x is equal to negative 16, so x is equal to 4. Now, if you go back and you look, what would the excluded values be? You see x minus 3 and x minus 3. So the excluded values, just 1 in this case, x cannot be 3. And that's okay. It doesn't, there's not a problem with this because my solution is x equal 4. So then when you go to check that, you should get 4 is equal to 4 when you check. That just means that this is correct. And what I mean by 4 equal 4, that's just what happens when I substitute 4 in for x, 4 in here, and 4 in here. So I would get 4 equal 4, which means that x equal 4 is correct, and there are the excluded values. Number 4, I'm scanning the denominator, and I see 3, x plus 3, x minus 1. Nothing can be factored. So the LCM would be, I'm going to write it as 3 times x minus 1 times x plus 3. It's going to be all of those multiplied by the original. So the entire LCM times this term, times this term, times this term. So what I will see when I do that is this x minus 1, this is kind of eliminating some steps in our thinking, but when I multiply the LCM by this term, the x minus 1s will divide out. So I'm left with 3 times x plus 3 times this x plus 3. When I multiply the LCM by this term, the x plus 3s will divide out, leaving me with 2 times 3, which is 6, times the remaining x minus 1. And then when I multiply the LCM by 5/3, the 3 will divide, and I'm left with 5 times the remaining x minus 1 times x plus 3. I also know that my excluded values cannot be 1 and -3. I can't say it's 3. This 3 doesn't have an effect on it because there's not a variable with it. So the excluded values observable are coming from here. X cannot be 1, x cannot be -3. So now I go back to my work. Notice I don't have any fractions, no rational equation now, just integers. So I do want to distribute, and I'm going to distribute the 3 to just this term, not to both. So that'll give me 3x plus 9. And now I've got 3x plus 9 times x plus 3. And then I'm going to multiply this out. So that'll give me 6x minus 6. And then I'm going to distribute the 5 to just 1. So 5x minus 5. And then I'm going to multiply it by the x plus 3. So I still have some multiplying left. This will give me 5x times x, or 5x squared. 5x times 3, which will be 15x. Negative 5x will be negative 5x. Negative times a positive be negative 15. Over here, I'm going to have 3x squared plus 9x plus 9x plus 27 plus 6x minus 6, just rewriting those. So I've got a lot of things that I need to combine. I'm always looking for my apples and apples. What are my like terms on the left side? I don't see any other x squared terms, so 3x squared. Here I've got 9x, 9x, and 27x. And so 9, 9, 20, excuse me, let me write that again. I've got 9 and 9 and 6x. So these 3. So that's 18 and 6, that'll be 24x. And then 27 minus 6, that's going to be 21. And then 5x squared. 15x minus 15x, that's going to be 10x minus 15. So I just combine what I can, and then I'm just going to move everything. So I'm going to subtract the 3x squared. And I'm going to subtract the 24x. And I'm going to subtract the 21. I'm just moving all of my terms to the left side, to the right side, which will put me with 0 on the left. So this will be 2x squared minus 14x minus, what's that, 36. And so I can factor a 2. So that'll give me x squared minus 7x minus 18. And I need two factors that multiply to give me negative 18, add to give me negatives. It would be 9 and 2, negative 9, positive 2. So x minus 9, x plus 2. So my solutions would be x equal 9 and x equal negative 2. And those two values do not conflict with my excluded values. So then it would just be a check. We would want to check 9, and we would want to check negative 2. And for the sake of that, if you check 9, you actually get 5/3 equals 5/3, so that checks. And then when you check negative 2, the same thing. You would get 5/3 equals 5/3. So they both work, both solutions work, and the excluded values is x cannot equal 1 and x cannot equal negative 3. All right, this will be the last problem for this part 1 of the video. I'm checking the denominators and I see something that I remember from exam 1, which is a difference of squares. And so since you see the difference of squares, you know, thinking back, that's going to be your conjugates. So what I have is 1 divided by x minus 4 plus 1/4 is equal to 8 divided by x plus 4 and x minus 4. There's your conjugates. So the LCM in this case is now you're scanning your denominators, and it's going to be 4 and x minus 4 and x plus 4. There's my LCM. So I'm going to multiply that by every term. And when I multiply the LCM by this first term, well, the x minus 4's divide out. So you're left with 4 times 1. You're left with 4 times x plus 4. Plus the LCM times the 1/4. 4 will divide the 4, and you're left with x minus 4 times x plus 4, which we know is x squared minus 16. And then this x plus 4, x minus 4 divides out with the x plus 4, x minus 4, leaving you with just 4 times the remaining 8, which gives you 32. So I'm going to distribute here, and that's going to give me 4x plus 16 plus x squared minus 16 equals 32. The 16s disappear. They go to 0, so I get x squared plus 4x. I'm going to subtract the 32 to the left and set it equal to 0. So I need two factors that multiply to give me negative 32 and add to give me 4. That would be 8 and 4 with the 4 negative. So that would be x plus 8, x minus 4. X can be negative 8 and x can be 4. Now, but if I go back and look at my excluded values cannot be 4. Or, remember, this is a difference of squares, so it can't be 4 and it can't be negative 4. But if you notice, one of the solutions here is x equal 4. Well, I can't have that, so that becomes an extraneous solution. And then I want to check and see if negative 8 would work. And x equal negative 8 does work. If you substitute negative 8 back into the equation, you get 4/24 is equal to 4/24. That checks. So final result, excluded values, x cannot be 4 or negative 4, and x is negative 8. And x equal 4 would be an extraneous solution.